Steve Willoughby has been consulting for 15, 20 years. I asked, what is the one thing that you hope the group would gain? And he says you have to have the commitment if you're going to get the value. How about that for a setup? I don't know that anybody heard me say that. Or not. By the way, I'm Rob Stewart. I'm the chair of the track. I'm the CEO of a company called Opus Works. We're one of the sponsors here. And the other thing I wanted to ask Steve is, you can see Steve's bio online, but I wanted to ask him for something personal, and he scratched his beard, and I said, well, how long have you had your beard? Because that's not something he would ordinarily tell you. He didn't answer the question directly, but he said, since I have a double chin. So the question really needs to be, as we get to the root cause of his beard, is, well, when did you get a double chin? So with that, we'll let you take it, Steve.
Yeah. Too early in life, I got a double chin. Now it's getting gray, so I'm gonna have to figure out the next one. Well, welcome, guys. Appreciate you coming by. Hopefully, I will not disappoint. I know, optimizing the value and operational excellence is kind of a broad topic. There's a lot of different ways to do this. Some of what I want to go through with this session is talk a little bit about how we're going to align our strategy, making sure we're pointing to our true north. Everything we're doing in operational excellence is aligned to that. Use another one of your keywords there, right? Alignment. How do we do that? So we got to have the accountability behind managing those strategies, goals, metrics behind it. How are you going to align those strategy, goals, and metrics to your frameworks and methodologies? What are you going to have in place? How are you going to use this information? And then at the end, I talk a little bit about identifying the best opportunities for your direction. I mean, we all have thousands of projects that go on. How are we going to make sure that we're picking the right ones? And how do we manage that going forward? And then a little bit about managing long-term success, right? It's going to be different for everybody, but how are we going to keep that commitment going and ensure that we continue this on in the long term? All right, so what is operational excellence? Big question, right? Essentially, it's an element of an organizational leadership that stresses the application of numerous methodologies and tools with a focus on the sustainable improvement of outstanding performance metrics, right? So what does that really mean? We got Lean, we have Six Sigma, we have all these buzzwords and methodologies that we have. OpEx is really how we're going to bond those together, take what we want, use the pieces that make sense for our organization to focus on improving these metrics that we've identified that we need to get to, right? Interesting study I found. A professor at Ohio State named Paul Nutt followed, I think it was a couple hundred companies for a 5-year span. Half of all of their major decisions failed to show value. Half. Why is that? Managers rush to judgment. Sorry about the managers in here, but it happens, right? They've got an idea in their head, they want to go with it, nothing's going to change it. Nothing to support it. They've got that's the first inclination, they're going to go with that. They're rushed to judgment. Misuse their resources. We talked about how are we going to get the commitment from everybody to handle these things. Well, if we're doing projects that don't show value, are people going to come back for the next time when we ask them for their help on a project? Repeatedly using failure-prone tactics to make decisions. How many people see that they actually do continuous improvement on their decision-making process, or there's changes in the way their management is coming about and picking these projects and making decisions, right? As an operational excellence organization, we have to eat our own dog food, right? We need to continuously improve and grow as we go, change the way we do things. If something doesn't work, let's evaluate it, see why, make that better for the next time we go through this. Now I'm going to add in one of my personal, a lack of in-depth knowledge or data to support a decision. See it all the time. The person who actually gets to make the decision, how much do they know about this decision that they're making? How much data have they gotten sent to them? How do they even know the process that they're making a decision on? Or is it a budget line item and say, yeah, you can go with that, or you can. So the first kind of topic I want to talk about is aligning to your true north. When I walk into companies as a consultant, the first thing I ask for is, where's your strategic plan? You brought me in for a project. How does this project align to your goals for the year, your 5-year strategy? You know, how many times I've gotten an actual valid one of those? Oh, well, here's our mission statement and our top goals. Okay, well, what's the metrics that you guys have for these goals? What are the metrics you're tracking in this project that are going to show if you're successful in this or not, right? So the first thing that we have to do if we want to start to optimize the value is we have to align all of our projects on our singular focus strategy. So if they come out and they do this great mission statement and say over the next 5 years, here's our goals, we want growth in these, okay, what are the metrics we're really tracking to those, and make sure as we bring these projects up, we can align to those metrics, put what we think we're going to gain on those metrics, and show it as a way to track our success going forward. I'm just going to throw out, and I know a lot of you guys are familiar with this stuff, sorry there's going to be a bit of this in my slides, but some different strategic design ways that people are operating. How many people have done Ocean? A few of you? It's a great tool if you can use it. The problem is you're going to get cross-eyed looks from everybody who tries to look at it and make sense of it if they haven't been trained on it, right? So the concepts behind it are great though, and it's all about how are we tracking to our goals, what are our resources aligned to, and all of that. Policy deployment, I think this is where most people probably fall into, right? We've got a strategic planning, and we're going to just define long-range key objectives that we want to get to. Now let's figure out how we're going to do that. I think it misses some of the alignment back up and tied to that. It's more of a, I'm going to tell you what we're doing over the next 5 years, and then you guys go do it, or not. Right? So creating a strategic plan, you know, I see a lot of companies, we have these vision statements with all these actions and projects they're supposed to align to. Are there long-term goals associated with that? Within those long-term goals, what are our short-term objectives, right? So it's great I can say I want to do, you know, increase our sales by 50% by 5 years. Okay, what are my short-term objectives? Do I have a goal 6 months out from now? Do I have a goal 2 years out from now? Or am I just saying I'm good in 5 years if I reach that? What are the metrics we're tracking to it, right? So just a little bit of some background on some different strategic designs. This is something I put together working with one of our clients, Health Ed. But we wanted to get a picture of what all is kind of affecting a strategy. And everything I do, being a process guy for 20 years, is I'm all process-centric. So for me, it always starts with a process. That's the heart of everything I do. But what are all the influences on it, right? So if we look at it from a strategic perspective, okay, we have our strategy. Where do we want to be? That's driven by our customer needs and expectations. So voice of customer, how do we need to affect our strategy? In the competitive marketplace, what are our competitors doing? Where do we see this work going to be in the next 5 years needs to be affecting our strategy? How are we going to align to that? How are we going to beat them? From our strategy, we develop our goals. What do we want to, how are we going to accomplish our strategy? What are the things we need to put out there to do? Under those goals, our KPIs are our metrics. How are we going to tell if we're successful in accomplishing that goal or not? How are we going to track everything that we're doing to reach that goal? So then we get down to the process area. Our processes should be aligned to those metrics. What processes affect those metrics? What ones deliver on those metrics? Within your processes, you're going to have policies that govern, right? We want to understand when I can't change something, why can't I change it? Healthcare, finance, there's a lot of governmental policies that are going to affect how you do things and what changes you make. We have our IT that enables our processes. What's the system architecture? What's the systems that we're using, and how can those be changed and fixed to help us reach our goals? And then we have our organizations and roles that execute on these processes. So is there manual things that we're going to be able to change? Are we going to be able to do some kind of workforce sharing? Are we going to share jobs and roles? Or is there some different things that we can do with that? So this is just kind of our initial picture, just to kind of get an idea of how we want everything to funnel down from the strategy's goals, all the influences across that into our process, and some high level what influences our processes or what we want to understand about our processes as we go through this. This next picture here, I did this a couple of years ago, and I still like it. It's changing, they're always evolving as it should be, but what we're going to go through is kind of a high-level example of process governance and how we get to prioritization of these. So we start out with, we have an executive governance committee. They're the ones that provide the clear mission and vision on which all these strategies are built, and against which all of our projects and actions should be checked against. Another group we're going to have, also a business steering committee, right? So once we get the executives to tell us where we need to do, what we need to do, now let's prioritize what our projects are, what are our milestones that we need to have, get a clear indication of the projects and their priority, what our resources are, staffing, get to the business of how we're going to get to these strategies and goals. Next, and I know how much, I don't know how much you guys are capability or process owners or use capability frameworks. A big piece of what I want to talk about is how important this setup is, understanding whether you want to have it functionally aligned, somebody that owns these capabilities or processes. They're going to be the ones, and when I talk about this, we'll get into it in a minute, but like a PCF, or if you're going to build a capability model, understand your functions and how you're going to manage those and how they align and filter up into these projects.
So Steve, how would this differ from never mind, just popped it right up as I was going to that.
All right.
Yeah, because that's the world I'm living in is the procured pay, plan and demand,
Right.
hire to retire for supporting HR. So.
And I've got a slide that I'm going to get into how those two fit together, but really this is functionally how you're going to own and manage this stuff. The end-to-end views or value streams or whatever methodology you're using to show what your customer and how you're providing the value to this customer. So I've put these here as give me the functional alignment. I have my building blocks underneath it. I take those building blocks and I build what's my end-to-end view or my value to the customer and how that process works, right? They're separate, but they're very closely aligned. So we have the strategic vision and objectives coming down from the executive governance committee, the business needs and challenges coming from the steering committee. Why I have this set out is what are our strengths and weaknesses in our capabilities, right? Functionally, what do we do well, what do we do poorly, what do we need to work on to help us achieve our goals? And then out of the end-to-end views, this is where we're doing our continuous improvement, building our operational excellence projects and how we're going to work those. And conversely, as it goes down, it goes back up, right? So we've got these improvement opportunities. We want to feed these up to the capability owners. Like, hey, the snippet of your process that you own, we're using in this end-to-end view. We've got an improvement opportunity around it. You need to be aware of it and help us with it. Understand how that's going to affect their capabilities. Is this something that's going to improve my capability, make it stronger, make us better? I've got this portfolio of these opportunities that we need to work on and prioritize which ones we want to go after first and give us the biggest bang for the buck. The steering committee then is responsible for the overall portfolio prioritization. So out of all these capabilities, we've looked at where are we weakest, what aligns to our strategy. Let's look at those projects first and how we're going to get to those. And then, of course, the big one that never works, the portfolio proving and funding. How can we best use our resources to get the most bang and get as many of these projects? All right. This one's going to be in there. We don't need to talk too much about this, but the benefits and the cautions of strategic design. Basically focusing on your strategic view, creating alignment and a shared vision across the organization. The biggest cautions, focusing on the structure and not the process behind it. Like, oh yeah, we have what we talked about earlier. We have these goals, we have the KPIs. Okay, but what's the process to making sure you're meeting those and keeping them aligned and, not BSing yourself about what really happened, right? So, as we get into this with an OpEx, I just put this in a little bit of organizational structure, depending on what methodology you're using or how you want to accomplish this. There's a couple different ways, right? Centralized, we have a centralized OpEx group. They live on their own on the side, they have a director or manager they report to, and then they go off and do projects for everything. You have the decentralized, with like lean, everybody's in that organization, right? You're supposed to frontline people working and doing these projects. And then you have a federated, which is a little bit of a combination of both of those. Maybe it's you have people in the organizations, but they're matrixed into this OpEx organization. They each have some pluses, minuses, depending on where you are in your maturity, and which methodologies or tools you're using may help identify what would be the best for you. A big piece of this, putting together a meta model, understanding your ecosystem. So what are the key things that you have information on that you can relate this information together and track? The more ties to your process that you have and understand, then the better your data will be, the better your understanding will be, the better plan on how it affects everything else, right? So this is just a little bit of a meta model that we put together. We have our resources, whether it's organizations, roles, or systems information. We've got our strategic design over here, so our strategies, goals, KPIs. You'll notice everything ties to process. Process is the center of it all. So once you understand what your ecosystem is and how you can tie these relationships and build this meta model for yourself, now let's make sure we're aligning it to our process, so our strategy, how we're going to execute on our strategy, right? So understanding your strategies, your goals, your KPIs, those are pretty easy to relate together, but how do we now identify these opportunities and improvements, make sure that we understand what the KPIs and metrics are, that those can help do, what processes are pieces of those that we can work on with those, and then what initiatives do we have in place that can bring all this together, right? So kind of expanding your meta model, making sure that you include in how you're going to tie together these initiatives and the opportunities for improvements to your basic core meta model. So now back to the capability or process framework. Why is it important? So especially in a lot of organizations today with we own this is our area, stay out, the silo building, this is where those silos can reside, right? Okay, you own those capabilities, you own those processes, true. You own that functional silo, you have everything that falls underneath in that place, right? Let's make sure we all understand it, we understand where the boundaries are, we create a common language to it. So when I'm talking about procure, I'll put managing a sales order, everybody understands what exactly that means. We have a common terminology, we have a common definition of it. It may be used in multiple different end-to-ends or value streams, but the core process is the same. Now, why is this important? If we don't have some type of functional thing in there, we're trying to build these relationships, it's like dumping a box of Legos on the floor, right? Oh, well, I think this is the sales order that we're process that we're doing, right? Or I think this piece is over here. You're not going to be able to build a clear picture if we don't have this kind of framework of well-defined and ownership and boundaries of it. I was like, you guys like Pinterest fails? So when you go in and you're doing a project and you're like, hey, we got to model out this process so that we understand it. Your expectation is you're going to have this beautiful thing. In reality, you're missing a lot. It might look somewhat like what it's supposed to, right? Okay, it's blue and yellow, but there's a block shape there, right? So if we don't have this structure in place and we're not pulling from this common area, you're not going to be able to get these repeatable results, and it's never going to meet your expectations of what it should be. Now, when we have a framework in place, I've got 2 kids, so when we walk into the Lego store, especially if you got OCD, it's amazing. There's this wall and all these buckets. And all these buckets, it's the same color, same size, same shape. You know, my kids can never do this, right? They're going to be that mess on the floor. But it makes it so easy when you're going through and you're like, okay, we need 2 of these pieces of this color, right? It's easy to find, it's easy to grab. It allows us to put together the complete picture on the side, right? So if you think of, okay, we have a function, it's the Lego color blue is what we're looking at, and sub-functions, we've got these different shapes. Is it a 2x2? Is it a 2x3? You know, breaking down this hierarchy of what it is, but being able to find all those pieces easily. So when you're going into projects, it doesn't take months for you to get an actual picture of what it's supposed to be. I don't know how many times I've gone into places and we've worked all this, built all this stuff out, and nobody's maintained it, nobody's put it in the structure, and we go back and we have to do it again in a year and a half because nobody's kept up with it, and it looks totally different, all right? Another piece of why I like doing frameworks is kind of figuring out how we're going to align this to our strategy. What are our strategic capabilities? So developing our strategy, our OpEx team, these are strategic capabilities that are going to help us get to where we want to do and plan for our future. What are our core capabilities? What is it we do that makes us different? What's our differentiators? So we're developing or managing our goods and services, providing those goods and services. Marketing and selling sometimes can be part of the core. Managing customer service, that's something that you guys do and needs to differentiate. Versus what's our enabling capability? So IT, HR, things that it's not the core of what you do, it's necessary to help you do it. A lot of times these things that are enabling, if you look at it, can be the first things that you outsource if you're going to do some of that stuff, right? It's not core to your business, it's not why you're in business, it's just there to help you handle and manage your business. So being able to look through this when we're now looking at our strategy and our goals and our opportunities, where are we going to focus most of our effort? In our core, where we differentiate ourselves, right? Okay, yes, we're going to have a lot of this enabling, okay, we need to do IT upgrades and that type of stuff to make us better, but it's got to relate to our core. Why are we doing that upgrade? To help us provide our goods and services to somebody, right? Now we'll fly through these next pieces because you guys all understand this. But once you have your framework in place, now what methodologies or ways are you going to do it? The great thing about OpEx, and I like having it called OpEx now, is we don't have the stigmatism of, oh, it's a lean, I don't want to do leans, I don't want to do value streams, right? Or Six Sigma, it's very data-driven, and I'll tell you guys a funny story. So about 10 years ago, I was interviewing for a job with one of the consulting companies, and they're like, I see you're a Six Sigma black belt. I'm like, yeah. So you use it? I'm like, yeah. It's like, when's the last time you did a NOVA, analysis of variance? And I sat there and I'm like, God, I don't really use my Six Sigma like technically I'm supposed to, right? So I think that's kind of where the lean Six Sigma came from. You know, it's not as intense driven on some of those Six Sigma things, but that one's always stuck with me. Like, I'm a fraud, I don't really use it. But so we have all these different methodologies now that we can put in place. You know, lean, if we wanted to look at this, getting the flow, very much getting out into the organization and having them be part of the frontline employees working on that, et cetera. Some of the tools that are tied to it, you know, the value stream mapping. You know, even now when I go in and I talk to people and they're like, oh, we've got value stream managers. I said, well, let's see your value stream maps. They're not really value stream maps. They're more kind of end-to-ends of putting together this information. It's the terminology that sticks, and I think hopefully with this OpEx and everything going that we can start to use these terminologies and we don't have to stick to the core of what that was, but kind of important to understand if you're doing a value stream, are you really doing it to manage the flow and the push and pull of that and get your tack time, or are you really doing it end-to-end and you're calling it a value stream and how you're going to manage this value to the customer and how you can do that. Process re-engineering, this is what it was called when I first started at General Motors years ago. I was a process engineer and I worked in re-engineering. Basically, we were doing process mapping, identifying pain points, getting all that information together, improving cycle times, all that good stuff. So that, you know, here you have your business workflows, information flows is a big part of it. I'll fly through these a little bit faster. Six Sigma, BPM. When I first started, BPM was business process modeling. Now it's associated more with automation, but basically taking this business, I like to put in there, I've got my capabilities or my processes, how those fit in, and I build my end-to-end views with them, and get the role and interaction levels. TQM, don't hear much of this anymore, but very closely tied to Lean, a lot of the similar terminology. But regardless of what methodology you're using or blend of methodologies, it's more important to have the structure in place and then figure out the best way you're going to use that structure and what tools will work with that structure and how you can do it. Now I want to talk a little bit about opportunity management. So now we've got our strategies, our goals aligned, we've got our framework in place, we've got our methodologies in place for how we're going to do this. So now we're getting all these opportunities. What are we going to do with them? So this first slide here kind of talks a little bit about the process of it. So we've got an intake and validation. Let's get all these opportunities in from all these various sources, validate them, are they really an opportunity or not? Go through, prioritize, and approve these. Let's align them to our metrics. Let's make sure we understand what this opportunity is doing, create those relationships to the processes, the metrics, the goals, everything along those, create kind of your business value scorecard out of this so they can be prioritized and put in order. And then where a lot of people say, don't stick with it, is okay, let's track the execution of this. Are we really meeting those goals and metrics? Is there things that we didn't identify early on that's causing effects from this process? And then understanding what the value realization is. And value realization isn't going to be, okay, we just implemented it, here's our assumptions, we're going to do it. You need to track this 6 months to 5 years, right? Are we still getting that value out of it? You know, when they say a watch pot never boils, okay, but your value, if you don't watch it, it never really happens, right? So you quickly can lose value just by not making sure you're staying on top of that value and keeping track of it, making sure it's sustained. This goes back to kind of the intake and validation of it. I kind of bucketed up here some different types of opportunities we'll have. Strategic projects, right? They'll come down from up top. We're doing these no matter what. Operational excellence, so our improvements and identified process improvement projects. Your research, what's your voice of the customer telling you, what you need to start to move to. Voice of an employee, typically missed. What is your frontline team telling you? Is there some serious problems they're having? Are you getting that feedback from them? Are you allowing them to create these opportunities on their own? And, in fact, we used to have in the plan a big, give us your problems and we'll give you bonuses if we actually go through and do them. Right? I don't see many companies doing that anymore, but it used to be a big thing. And then we have your internal upgrades, right? So system upgrades get us back to operating efficiently with our applications and systems that we have. So taking all of these different types of opportunities, we have our funnel now. Let's go through and analyze these, prioritize them, execute, and monitor all these opportunities we're going through. So as far as ongoing management, the key to this is as you build your frameworks in places, let's make it repeatable. This can't be something that we do differently every time we do it. Not to say you're not going to change it, but let's make sure that as we do it, it's something sustainable that we can keep repeating. Simplify it. Don't make it overly manual. How many people spend so much time filling out spreadsheets and PowerPoints to give these updates, right? Simplify it. Make it so that somebody's not spending half their time giving you an update on what they're doing. Assign ownership and accountability. If we don't make people accountable for this stuff, how are you going to make sure it happens? A lot of places I go, oh, well, yeah, I own that. Oh, so if it doesn't meet this metric, do you not get your bonus? No. Okay, well, how are we going to make this accountable for you to make sure it happens? Create engagement. Let's get everybody involved, make sure everybody stays involved, get the commitment from everybody. Celebrate your victories. There's been very few places I've been that like to throw the big parties at the end of these, right? But celebrate when we have wins. Let's show everybody what a good job they did. Continue to evolve. just because we created it once doesn't mean we're good for the rest of our life on it, right? We've got to continue to look at it, eat our own dog food, make it better as we go, and then you are never done. So there's no point where you put a time stamp and say, hey, we're done. You're constantly working on this and keeping it going. All right, that's it.
Steve, thank you very much.